My sister and I have always had a complicated relationship. She's the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes, the one who got the bigger bedroom, the better car for her sweet 16, the college fund that somehow ran dry right before it was my turn. I never held it against her. Not really. I just learned to build my own path quietly, without expecting any help from the family safety net. So when she called me crying 3 months before her wedding, I should have let it go to voicemail. She was getting married to a guy named Derek. Perfectly nice, a little boring, the kind of man who describes himself as a real steak and potatoes guy, and means it as a personality trait. The wedding was going to be massive. 300 guests, a venue that cost more than my first car, an open bar that Derek's parents were apparently financing while quietly resenting every minute of it. The problem? The wedding cake. My sister, her name is Rachel, had booked a baker 8 months in advance. Deposit paid, design approved, the whole thing. 2 tiers of vanilla sponge, 1 tier of lemon drizzle, decorated with these incredibly delicate sugar flowers that the baker, a woman named Claire, had spent weeks perfecting in test runs. It was genuinely beautiful. I saw the photos. 3 weeks before the wedding, Claire had a family emergency, a serious one. Her mother suffered a stroke, and Claire had to travel out of state with no clear return date. She called Rachel personally, in tears, offering a full refund and a list of every other baker in the area she trusted to potentially take over. Rachel did not take this well. I heard about it through my mom first, which is never a good sign. Apparently, Rachel had told Claire that her personal tragedy was incredibly inconvenient timing, and that she expected the cake to be delivered regardless. When Claire explained that she physically couldn't do that, Rachel started calling around, telling people that Claire had abandoned her and was unprofessional. I made the mistake of saying gently over a family dinner that maybe Claire deserved a little grace given that her mother was in the hospital. Rachel looked at me like I'd suggested we cancel the wedding entirely. "You've never planned a wedding," she said. "You don't understand the stress." I let it go. I always let it go. Then, 2 weeks before the wedding, Rachel called me again. She'd found a replacement baker, a woman who ran a small operation out of her home, enthusiastic and talented, but, as Rachel put it, not quite getting the vision. Rachel wanted me to go with her to the tasting and consultation because, and I quote, "You're good at talking to people like that. People like that." I asked her what she meant. She said, "You know, artsy types. You speak their language." I'm a graphic designer. I don't know what language she thought I spoke, but I went anyway, because I am apparently unable to say no to my family, even after 31 years of evidence that I should learn. The new baker, whose name was Priya, was genuinely lovely. Her home studio was immaculate, her portfolio was impressive, and within 20 minutes she had sketched out a revised design that was, honestly, more beautiful than the original. Different, simpler, more elegant, but stunning. Rachel hated it. Not the cake itself. She kept saying it was fine. What she hated was that it wasn't the exact cake she had originally envisioned. She wanted the sugar flowers. Priya explained patiently that the sugar flowers Claire had been working on were a highly specialized technique that took weeks of practice per batch, and she simply didn't have the time to produce them at the same quality in 2 weeks. "Can't you just try?" Rachel said. "I could try," Priya said carefully, "but I don't want to promise you something I can't deliver at the standard you deserve." I thought that was a remarkably professional answer. Rachel interpreted it as a personal attack. In the car afterward, Rachel said she was thinking of just ordering a supermarket sheet cake as a protest against everyone who had let her down. I pointed out that this would mostly punish her 300 guests and herself. She told me I was being unsupportive. Here's where I apparently became the villain of this story. I told her, calmly and without any particular heat, that I thought she owed Claire an apology, that Claire's mother had a stroke, that no professional obligation extends to a medical family emergency, that Priya had been nothing but gracious and talented, and that the cake she'd designed was genuinely beautiful if Rachel could just let go of the original vision for 5 minutes. Silence in the car. Then, I can't believe you're taking everyone's side except mine. I'm not taking sides. I'm telling you that the world doesn't pause for weddings, and the people around you are doing their best. She didn't speak to me for 4 days. In the end, she went with Priya's cake, no sugar flowers. Instead, Priya did this incredible cascading design with pressed edible botanicals that looked like something out of a fairy tale. Every single guest commented on it. Derek cried a little when he saw it, which I thought was very sweet. Rachel admitted to me at the reception, after 2 glasses of champagne, that it was the most beautiful cake she'd ever seen. She did not call Claire to apologize, as far as I know. I didn't bring it up. Some battles aren't worth winning. Some bridges get built slowly, one concession at a time, and you have to decide if the relationship at the end of the bridge is worth the construction cost. With Rachel, I'm still deciding, but the cake was magnificent, and Priya got about 40 new clients from that wedding, which felt, to me, like the universe balancing its books.
For 2 years, I thought my neighbor Gerald was just a miserable person. He'd moved in next door about 6 months after I bought my place. A small house in a quiet suburb, the kind of street where people wave from driveways and leave zucchini on each other's porches in August, because everyone's garden produces more than any reasonable family can eat. Gerald did not leave zucchini. Gerald complained about everything. My recycling bin being 2 inches over the property line on collection day. My car being parked in a way he felt was aggressive, which I still don't fully understand. My wind chimes, which I removed within a week of buying them because, honestly, yes, I get it. Wind chimes are a lot. My porch light, which he said was too bright. My porch light that I then replaced, which he said was the wrong color temperature. I am a patient person. Ask anyone who knows me. I let things slide. I give the benefit of the doubt until the doubt runs out of benefits. But Gerald was testing limits I didn't know I had. My partner Jess wanted to go full-on feud. Jess is a Scorpio and approaches conflict the way a sommelier approaches a bad wine, with detailed notes and a long memory. Jess had spreadsheets, documented every complaint, every passive-aggressive note Gerald had left in our mailbox, every time he'd called the city noise line at 8 p.m. on a Saturday because we were having 4 friends over for dinner. I kept saying, "Let it go. Don't escalate. He's just unhappy and we're convenient." Jess was unconvinced but patient. The turning point came on a Tuesday afternoon in October when I was raking leaves in the front yard and Gerald came out to get his mail. We made eye contact. That horrible moment where you both know you've made eye contact and now you have to do something about it. I decided, in that split second, to just try. One genuine attempt. "Hey, Gerald," I said. "Nice afternoon." He looked at me for a long moment. I prepared for a complaint about my leaf pile being too close to the sidewalk. Instead, he said quietly, "Your house looks like my daughter's house." I didn't know what to say. "She had the same blue shutters," he continued, not looking at me directly. "Same kind of porch. She used to leave the light on all night when her husband worked late. I could see it from the street." He picked up his mail. He went inside. I stood there in my yard holding a rake like I'd been struck by lightning. That evening I did something I maybe should have done 2 years earlier. I talked to our other neighbor, an older woman named Pat who had lived on the street for 20 years and knew everyone's business with the warm, non-malicious thoroughness of someone who simply pays attention. Pat told me that Gerald had moved here after his daughter died. Suddenly, an accident, 18 months before he appeared next door to me. He had sold his own home because he couldn't be in it anymore, and he'd ended up on our street entirely by chance, right next door to a house that apparently looked enough like hers to be a daily open wound. I didn't sleep well that night. I want to be honest here. This didn't immediately make everything okay. 2 years of nitpicking complaints don't vanish because you understand the source. Grief explains behavior. It doesn't always excuse it. I know that. Jess knows that. But something shifted for me. I started leaving things, not in a dramatic way. I wasn't going to knock on his door with a casserole and a tearful speech. Just small things. When I made too much soup, I left a container on his porch with a note. When the bakery down the street did a surplus sale, I bought an extra loaf of the seeded sourdough Gerald had once mentioned in passing that he liked. I shoveled his walk a few times in winter without mentioning it. He never said thank you. Not directly. But the complaints slowed, then mostly stopped. One morning in spring, I found a small pot of tomato seedlings on my porch with a folded note. The note just said, "These do well in your light." South facing. Jess, who witnessed me reading this note, said I looked like I was going to cry. I denied it unconvincingly. We're not friends, Gerald and I. I don't think we'll ever be friends. Some people come into your life, and what's possible between you is simply limited by what they've been through, and that's not a failure, it's just reality. But last fall, he came outside when I was putting up some string lights on the porch railing. I braced myself. He watched for a moment and then said she had those too. Every Christmas. "They're nice lights," I said. "Yeah," he said. "They are." He went back inside. I finished hanging the lights. Jess came out with 2 cups of tea, and we sat on the porch for a while in the early dark. And the lights were warm and gold, and I thought about how sometimes the most complicated people in our lives are complicated for reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with us. And how knowing that doesn't make it easier exactly, but it makes it something you can carry.
I have worked in offices for 11 years. I have survived bad managers, dysfunctional teams, a company-wide culture reset that resulted in mandatory monthly trust falls, and one memorable period where HR sent out a passive-aggressive all-staff email about the correct way to load a dishwasher that somehow made everyone angrier than any actual workplace conflict we'd had that year. Nothing prepared me for the microwave situation. It started innocently. It always does. Our office kitchen had 2 microwaves, which sounds like plenty, until you factor in 43 people, a lunch hour of approximately 37 minutes, and the fact that one of the microwaves had been running at roughly 60% power since 2019, because nobody wanted to submit a maintenance request and be the person who had to interact with the building management company, which was legendarily difficult to deal with. I submitted the maintenance request. The microwave got fixed. This should have been a neutral good thing. It was universally acknowledged as a neutral good thing. Then I made my mistake. I sent a follow-up email to the office manager, a friendly, practical email suggesting that we establish a no fish in the microwave policy, because in the months since the microwave had been repaired, someone had been heating up fish at least 3 times a week, and the smell was genuinely lingering for hours and affecting the afternoon work environment. I want to be clear, I did not name anyone. I had no idea who was heating the fish. I was not targeting anyone. I was raising what I thought was a pretty common and reasonable office hygiene suggestion. The office manager forwarded my email to the whole staff. I discovered this when my coworker Diane appeared at my desk with an expression I can only describe as gleeful dread, and said, "Oh, you are in so much trouble." Apparently, the fish microwaver was Marcus. Marcus, who had worked at the company for 14 years. Marcus, who was beloved by everyone. Marcus, whose fish was a specific Korean dish his wife packed for him every Tuesday and Thursday, because he'd been homesick for it since they'd moved cities for her job, a story that had apparently circulated and become something of an office legend of quiet devotion. I did not know any of this. Within 2 hours, the office had essentially split into factions. There were people who agreed with me that fish smell was a legitimate issue. There were people who felt I had attacked Marcus personally. There were people who somehow made this about open-plan offices in general. There was one guy in accounting who sent a 4-paragraph reply, all about the weaponization of comfort in shared spaces, that I still think about sometimes. Marcus himself sent me a very polite message, saying he hoped there were no hard feelings, which was somehow worse than if he'd been angry. I spent the rest of the day at my desk, wishing I could dissolve into the carpet. Here's the part where I either redeemed myself or made it worse, depending on who you ask. I bought lunch, a fairly substantial spread from a good place nearby, and I put it in the kitchen with a note that said something like, "I clearly started something I didn't intend to. Sorry for the chaos. Hope this helps. No mention of fish, microwaves, Marcus, or any of it." Marcus came to my desk afterward. He had the sandwich I'd bought, and he was half smiling. "For what it's worth," he said, "the fish does smell. My wife has been telling me for months to bring something else." "Please don't change your lunch because of me," I said. "I'm not changing it because of you," he said. "I'm changing it because she's right, and I've been stubborn about it." He offered me half his sandwich, which I declined because it was already 3 p.m. and I'd stress-eaten through lunch, and he laughed, and that was, essentially, the end of the microwave situation. The no-fish policy was never officially adopted. Nobody ever heated fish in that office again while I worked there. The reply-all guy in accounting was talked to by HR about the length and tone of his responses, which had been an ongoing issue apparently predating my incident by years. And somehow, because offices are strange ecosystems, governed by strange social physics, the whole thing became something we laughed about. At my going-away party 2 years later, someone made a cake with a fish on it. Marcus gave a speech. It was very kind. The moral of this story, if it has one, is that intentions matter a lot less than impact in shared spaces, that every policy you try to make in an office is going to land on someone's lunch, and that buying food is still, after all these years, the most reliable way to reset a social situation. Also, the fish smelled. I stand by that.